Welcome to another episode of Shifting Perspectives on Autism. And this is a show that's really featuring people within the autism community. So that could be either individuals that have been diagnosed with autism or parents and caregivers that we consider shifters or influencers. And so today, my special guest is Daniel Jones, actually Daniel Morgan Jones. And he is definitely an influencer and is actually the #1 resource in the UK. So welcome, Daniel.
Hello, how's it going?
Doing good. How about you?
Yeah, I'm doing really good. I think I'm enjoying the weather getting a bit better and COVID's easing up, so it's all looking good.
Plus, right? Are you guys getting still cold weather?
No. It's hot. It's weird because like in this time of year, it starts getting really warm, and then it stays this warm until October. But the thing is, you get like showers and stuff, so it's like hot, but it's like the rain's pouring, so you have to like put the heat in because the rain's kind of quite cold now. It's just it's messy. It's messy, but yeah, it's getting there. It's getting there.
We're in Tampa, Florida, so
nice.
We're getting into our summer season, so. But anyway, well, I'm really excited of the work that you're doing on behalf of our autism community. And not only, do you represent Asperger's, but you also represent ADHD, OCD, and dyslexia. So quite a few different diagnoses, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, comorbid conditions.
Do you find that there's some similarities between the diagnoses?
I think I think ADHD and Asperger's syndrome, obviously it's now formally called ASD, which is just autism spectrum disorder. I think they have the most crossover due to their, I think it would be like the hyper-focus part of like, finding a topic and really zoning in on this topic, but then also having really poor social skills. So I feel like a lot of people with ADHD will suffer from poor social skills because of the way just by the way that social interaction actually works in a way where, if you're very hyperactive, like I'm a very hyperactive person. So if I'm like, bouncing about, people don't know how to take you, so it could cause a lot of social interaction issues in that respect. But then of course, Asperger's syndrome or ASD, it impacts the way the communication part of one's brain, so that social norms where you'd have like unwritten social language or kind of social conventions would be somewhat limited because they're things that you'd pick up being a neurotypical person, but being it's difficult to do that.
Okay. And I think all of these diagnoses are really all part of the kind of the neurodiversity umbrella now. So that we're all a little different. We think a little different, or our characteristics might be a little bit different, or we learn in a different way. And I think that, part of the neurodiversity movement saying, hey, we've just got to really understand each person, each individual for who they are. And that will make for a better world for all of us, right?
Yeah, a lot of people don't really understand because they see like kids, because obviously autism is first noticed in children because, well, it's your earliest point of existence, isn't it? So a lot of people's kind of attention is around children on the spectrum because it's the most difficult time that most people find having a child on the spectrum. And then they forget that adults are on the spectrum and they grow and evolve and change and learn things, So being an adult with an autism spectrum disorder, you still have major issues, but then you've learned certain things. Like my vocabulary and lexicon has become, very integrated into my character, and it's really who I am, So, but a lot of people, when I was a kid, if you'd met me like when I was like younger, I wouldn't say hello to you, let alone have an intellectual conversation. So it's interesting to understand the whole concept of it, that nothing's changed, but it develops, it grows over time.
Yeah, you grow and develop. Well, I thought your story is interesting, and I'd love to get into that a little bit. So you actually got a later diagnosis, right?
I did, yeah.
It was at 26?
That's correct, yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay, so can you take us kind of back to your childhood and share with us a little bit about, what that was like?
Yeah, it was difficult, very difficult. It was challenging because school was horrendous because I was in the special education program in school, right? So in the mornings I'd be in the regular class with all the other kids, and then in the afternoons I'd be in like this special ed kind of part of the school. But of course, I started. Well, I was in primary school or preschool back in the 1980s and early 1990s. So it was very kind of like archaic in the way it like. Like they didn't know what they were doing. This is kind of the reason why I didn't get diagnosed until later on in life, but obviously there was some issues. So they kind of made a deal where I didn't, because going outside in the playground and trying to play with the other kids was so like, whoa, it just used to freak me out so much that like, I just wouldn't go to school in the end. And so they agreed that I was allowed to use the computer, excuse me. No, they had some computers with some Encarta software on them, which is, I don't know if you remember Encarta. It was like the original kind of encyclopedias you could get. And I was allowed to go and search those. So that was kind of like I love doing that. But then like home life was super difficult. I only really liked a few things. I like collecting, like action figure collections. I love collecting things and displaying them on shelves. But then I also really loved like electronics, and I used to make things. So I'd be completely happy in my element at home. I'd have like ham radios and I'd build aerials, and I'd extend kind of like, distance and ranges and different types of radios and stuff. And I love doing that kind of thing, And then computers are obviously like my next thing. But anytime I wasn't doing those things, I was completely just like, like frozen, and it was horrendous. It was the most difficult time of my life was when I was between the ages of like 5 and say 12. It was like so difficult. Like, and I had an explanation for it. Like, so I had this really big conundrum when I was a kid. So there was my parents were kind of like thinking that I was just like super shy, and I needed to have more exposure to other kids and things like that to kind of rock out of my shell. And they thought I had agoraphobia, right? But so I lived about a mile walk away from the high school, and my parents used to walk me to and from primary school, but they said, when you go to high school, you have to walk yourself to high school. And it's like, okay, because my brother and sister were doing it, right? And I was the youngest. And so I remember I used to walk with my brother and sister to and from school, but then they left school. And then for like, I think it was about 2 weeks, I had to kind of go from the school to my home on my own.
Wow.
Sorry, my dog barking. And it was the most horrendous thing in the world. Like I really didn't know where I was going. And I also didn't know, it was just so overwhelming. It was kind of like, I don't know if you've seen the film Beetlejuice, where like the people are dead and they open their door, but then like there's huge sand monsters going after them and everything. Nothing looks like what they remember it. And they were like, whoa. It's kind of like that, when I'm with my parents or with like my sister or my brother, it was kind of like I took that lead and I just let them go, and I kind of just was in my own kind of space, but then when I had to do it on my own, it was like, whoa. And it was horrible. I'd rather have just been dead at that point. It's a horrible thing to say, but that's what it felt like.
Wow. Oh my goodness. So then you're saying that like the most challenging times were between 5 and then what happens when you get into the teenage years? What does that look like?
Well, it's fascinating because you're allowed, when you get into a teenage years, you're given responsibility to become yourself. You're becoming a younger adult or an adolescent, and with those restrictions, the expression that you have to be creative and quirky and odd, and you can do all of those things, and there's no responsibility on you, but you're given responsibility to make sure you're safe and stuff, but there's no responsibility. You don't have bills, you don't have a job, you don't have to go to school. You choose if you want to go to technical college, you choose if you want to get a job. Those things are in your power. So the pressures of the mondial, or the mundane pressures, they've disappeared, and you're allowed to express yourself. So that's quite an interesting experience, because I really feel like you're able to come into your own at that point, which is when I saw my most growth. Between the ages of like 13 and like 18, I saw the most growth as myself. Okay. Sorry, my dog. Give me 1 second.
Yeah, we love pets.
I know. I was just trying to get under his blanket. Hold on. Okay, there we go. Okay, sorry. I have a tiny Jack Russell, and he's trying to get under his blanket. So, but yes.
You said then, during those years, then you felt like you were able to kind of step into your own, like understand yourself a little bit better, or?
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say understand. I feel like there was no judgment, like, so when you become like a teenager, you can find friends or find camaraderie with people, and they won't judge you. They'll just, they're there just because they like who you are. There's no, like, when you're in primary school and high school, you're forced into places with people who you don't click with. But when I chose to do music and performing arts in technical college, I was around people who are creative and other people who had ADHD and other people who are of that mindset. So the things that I found challenging in typical environments, everybody else who was there was cool. So it didn't really matter. I was kind of gaining this camaraderie, which was super cool. I really enjoyed that.
You kind of fit right in then at that point, right? Everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I did find it interesting that you kind of identified your unique ability. We call them unique abilities, which is, what you're passionate about, at an early age. So you mentioned the computer and the superheroes. And so there were certainly things that you were drawn to then. Did that continue into your adulthood?
Yeah, I did electronics in high school. So when I was telling you about making those radios, I wasn't even in high school at that time. I was still expanding. I was about maybe 8, and I was creating like radio frequency expansion modules and stuff. So those things were really fun, and I was obsessed with like virtual reality and games. And also chemistry. I was really interested in chemistry, but so I eventually did do that. I have a degree in chemistry. I was going to do a PhD in it, but the department closed down here. But I was going to do I did my degree in chemistry, the bachelor's degree. And the cool thing about it was I incorporated all those things. I created a teaching tool in virtual reality for teaching kids using Minecraft to teach people something called molecular symmetry and group theory, which is quite a physical chemistry concept. It's like quantum physics, but like in visual format. But people find it quite difficult, but I love that. So I was trying to show people how fun and easy it could be. So I did that. So those things did come with me, and now I create videos, for a living, and I create podcasts and things like that, and graphical art and websites. And so I've always been around those things.
That is really cool. I love how, you're just such an example, because one of the things that we really tout at Autism Shifts is how, most of the time our autism population has a unique ability, early on. And if they don't, it's just because they haven't explored enough things to really find what they're engaged in. But I think you're such a great example of taking that, that unique passion and ability and how it transfers then into future, into careers. And I think sometimes as parents and caregivers, we don't make that connection as much. We think, oh, they're just obsessed with doing that. But really, what we say is, hey, if they're really passionate about doing that as a child, and they can do that for countless hours, that really builds up an expertise in that area. Definitely carry through, if they stay 100%. Engaged in that. It's really awesome.
And it's really funny as well, because like parents may say like, well, there's no career in Lego, and maybe so, but I still disagree with that. People still hire builders in Legoland to create models. But I mean, like, the skills that and this is a great example. So I was obsessed with Lego when I was a kid, right? But the skills transposed into something else. Part of my my thesis I did in chemistry was I was showing ionic transfer between ions that had electric charges, and I was trying to balance these charges. And one way I did it was I could show it through Lego bricks and building a Lego wall. And if the wall was complete, the charges were balanced because each common ion had a certain kind of charge, negative or positive, and the Lego bricks could represent this, right? Without me showing you physically, I can't really explain. And so it just showed how, like, as a little Lego, it was helpful to me when I was a kid, using Minecraft to show quantum molecular symmetry and, using it for ionic transfers in chemistry, which is a great kind of skill that I carried over.
That's perfect. Yeah, it's like the premise, which is whether it's how to formulate something, how to put it together, how to create something. I mean, that can transfer in so many different areas, Mm-hmm. So I just, again, I love that example. And the fact that you went to college, because a smaller percentage of our autism population seems to be able to attend college or graduate.
Well, there is a caveat on that.
Okay.
So I didn't. So I left school. I left high school. So in the United Kingdom, we leave high school at 16. Goodness me. So we leave high school at 16,
Ah,
and then you enter something called technical college, which is a free kind of. You don't pay for it, but you can get a diploma, which is a stepping stone to doing a degree placement when you're 18, right? So between the ages of 16 and 18, you do this like 2 year or 1 year course in a college that gives you this stepping stone into another career. So I did performing arts and music, and then you can't really go anywhere else from that unless you want to be like a performing arts teacher or something. So I didn't do anything then, but until I was 27, 28, I was 28,
okay.
and I wanted to do college, like a university college, but I couldn't do this because I'd had such a bad time in education because I wasn't given additional time. Nobody understood my additional needs, right? But now I have the diagnosis. My key worker, which is a guy who used to come visit me every week, which was amazing. He was government funded until horrible government disbanded funding for it. But he said to me, hey, we can apply for universities and I can help you and we can put stuff in place. Now, if I didn't have the disability student advisory kind of board that helped me, have a note taker, extra time in exams, using a computer to answer exams because my handwriting's terrible, poor motor skills. If I didn't have those additional things, I could never have passed my degree. But it was thanks to having that. But I can't even, my entire, career in university was all down to that. And 100%, like and I think they've pulled funding for a lot of that as well for disabled students, which is horrendous. So,
yeah, that's such a support, right? It helps, it helps in the learning process, and sometimes we need some additional support.
Oh, incredible! Like it was absolutely incredible.
Wow.
Yeah, the disability student place was just incredible, and they'd won awards. They called the Miles Dyslexia Center, and they'd won awards for all kinds of stuff. It was just incredible.
Yeah.
It really was. It really was.
You're a testimony that it works. That process helps people who may not otherwise have been able to get through the system. So,
100%.
I'm a big advocate for that. Anything we need, to ways to help us. So it sounds like though, first you received the diagnosis.
Yeah.
Because you received a diagnosis at 26 and you decide to go back to college at 27. So now you have your diagnosis. So let me ask you this. What propelled you, though, to get that formal diagnosis? I mean, now you've gone through, you're 26. Did you suspect that you have autism during those years, or?
Yeah, so I mean, there's real two questions there. I'll answer the latter first. So, 26 years of I did have a diagnosis of dyslexia, but then I'd had all these kind of like, oh, he's got short-term memory loss, he's got agoraphobia, he has social anxiety, he has anxiety, he has aggressive emotional issues, he has anger issues. So we had all of these little factioned off pieces of the puzzle, no pun intended. Yeah. And it was kind of like, my self-confidence and self-worth was kind of like rock bottom because I just felt like I was such an oddball that like I wouldn't fit into these kind of boxes, and I'd trying all different types of jobs and they wouldn't last long because I'd end up getting super depressed and then being on medication, and my doctors were like, what on earth is going on? And it was just all this thing, right? So yeah, I suspected, but then I just realized maybe this is it, maybe I'm just that kind of person and there's nothing that can help me. I'm just a bit of a loser, and that's how I felt. Wow. But then after having the diagnosis, you kind of then look at yourself and go, oh my goodness, like, I am not to blame for any shortcomings in my ability to learn in a certain way. I'm just a product of the world that our society has created to teach me certain things. So I realized, well, maybe I could, because I always wanted to be a scientist when I was a kid, right? But then that dream just went out the window because but then I was like, no, I'm going to be a scientist, like forget all the self-doubt I had, since I had this diagnosis and I had this like new support team around me, I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. So that's why I decided to go back and do it. And that's how it happened. And that's why it's so close together.
Wow, that's amazing. So, okay, so now you graduate from college at what age?
I was 31. I was 31 when I graduated, yeah.
31, wow. Okay, so you got the diagnosis at 26. Let me go back to that because I did want to ask you this question. So when you get the diagnosis, because we work with a lot of individuals diagnosed that get the diagnosis later. And I hear a mix of things, sometimes it's a relief like, oh gosh, now I finally have an answer. Now this finally all makes sense. And sometimes it could be that plus, you know, now I have this label, and the label is a little stigmatized and it's not that great. Which, did you fall in either of those categories, or what would you say you experienced?
I was kind of like, I was relieved that in a way that I could put my finger on something, you know. I'd be like, oh, that's what it is. That's what it is. Because when you can understand what's going on, then you can prepare outcomes. And if you know your outcomes, then the journey is easy. You know, you pivot and change to make sure that succession happens. So to me, it was a logical process, a computational logical process, that since I had that, it was like the piece that I needed to create this stepping stone. Now, on the contrary, the negative part of it for me was when I then was telling people, I'm sorry, I'm not going to go to this birthday party because I don't like going to birthday parties. And now, you know, I only ever used to drink alcohol because it was the only way that I could confidently go anywhere, you know, to birthday parties, right? And then my doctor's like, well, don't do that then. And I don't like alcohol. And I haven't had alcohol for 12 years. And so, you know, everyone would be like, oh, wow. And I was like, oh, look, I'm on the autism spectrum. And the only negative would be, I don't think so. You know, somebody say, oh, I don't think so. You don't look like you're on the autism. You know, I've got this kid, I know this kid who's like this. And I'm like, okay, so first of all, I'm in my 30s. So second of all, you know, like, who are you to judge my condition? You know, like, this, you're not a clinical psychiatrist or psychologist. You don't diagnose people on a daily basis. Please keep your reservations about what, you know, my condition is to me, to yourself. And so that was the biggest negative I came across. Other than that, I really don't care about labels or stigmatization. You know, like, people can think what they want. Ultimately, it's my actions that define who I am, you know, and I stick with that.
That's a great perspective, Daniel. That keeps us all sane, for sure, because it's not what other people think. But I do think that that's a byproduct of the stigma, right? Because the stigma says that autism looks this way, you know, or is experienced this way, and we experience that as well. I started out with a cafe program and trained up baristas that you know had autism. And that's what we ended up getting. People would come into the cafe and they would say, well, they don't have autism, because they're expecting a certain characteristics. Yeah. Now they're not demonstrating, so they don't think, oh, they must have overcome autism. So it's just interesting how the stigma goes out.
Yeah, it's really funny. It is, and I think it's kind of like ignorance due to lack of education, because you know, there's so to be done, needs to be done. It's just my empire exists, you know, of what I'm doing on YouTube and Facebook and Instagram and everything else that I'm on, you know, is because I feel like the conversation needs to be just constant, ongoing. It needs to be constant flow, and so
it needs to be a constant education, right? To help people understand. You know, I want to get into that now, because you are huge. You've got, you know, just close to 150,000 subscribers to your YouTube channel. You have millions and millions of views. You have Instagram follows. You're a speaker. You're an author. So you've done so many great things. When did you make the decision that, hey, I want to be an advocate for the autism community? How did that come about?
You know, it's funny. I actually have 157,000 subscribers on my YouTube channel now, which is just crazy. Thank you. And we just hit 53,000 followers on Facebook as well, which is kind of cool. And so we're doing, you know, trying to do daily videos on there, but we do weeklies.
That's awesome.
You know, it's kind of funny. I never intended to do it. You know, it was never something I wanted to do. Funny enough, I wanted to do a YouTube channel before this, and I wanted to just do fun things because I felt it was a good creative outlet. And it wasn't the career aspect of it. It was an outlet for me to create funny videos or fun things and learn about cameras and things like that. You know, like I like technology and gear and stuff. So I was like, oh yeah. And so I did some YouTube videos and that was it. You know, it went out the window. And back in 2008, 2008, long before YouTube was a thing where people could subscribe and get paid to do it, I started uploading. I had an operation, and I was in a wheelchair for a little bit, so I couldn't like walk, couldn't go anywhere, and so I just sat on my parents' sofa, just like watching like TV and stuff. And I had my laptop with me, and so I made a YouTube account, and I just started uploading like these daily diaries, you know, to get me sane through this process. And because I had this MacBook, and I could, you know, use video editing software, which is cool. And people started subscribing and asking for more videos, and it kind of freaked me out a bit. I didn't know what on earth was going on, so I stopped doing that. And then if you fast forward, what happened was after I had my diagnosis, I looked everywhere for information on Asperger's syndrome, because that was what I was diagnosed with before they changed it formally to autism spectrum disorder, right? So I was looking at Asperger's syndrome stuff, and there was nothing. It was like it was quite dire, you know. There was little information, especially visual information, because I'm quite a visual learner. And so I went on YouTube, and I found a couple of videos on YouTube, and they were just terrible. I mean, they were just pants, you know. It was like a guy in his bedroom. It was terrible lighting. It wasn't entertaining. It wasn't fun. It was quite depressing, in all honesty. And I thought, oh goodness me, you know, I don't want to watch this. So why would anybody else want to watch this? They're not going to feel good about themselves, and it's not going to help educate anybody. So I thought, well, maybe I'll do my own video, and maybe that would be better. So I made one video on an iPad. I recorded it on an iPad, and I put it on YouTube, and I didn't think anything of it. It wasn't any better than these people, to be fair. I mean, it was my first ever YouTube video, but it got a lot of traction. And I logged in, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 months after posting the video, and there were so many people like, please upload more, please upload more. And they'd subscribe to it. And I was like, okay. And so I just started putting out more videos, and then it kind of just churned into more of it. And then the more I got involved with it, and the more help I realized. And the help came from this, you know, like, I had this realization. I was like, I just spent 26 years of my life literally bouncing around in the dark, bumping into walls, but making my best effort at it, right? And I'm still here, I'm still strong, and I managed to get over it. So if I have stuff for 26 years worth that I could help other people overcome stuff with without even having a diagnosis, then, you know, maybe that's some value in it. So then I decided to do that. You know, all the things I've used throughout my life, the coping skills, the tips and tricks, the hacks, the strategies, the stuff that I've used. And so that's how it really came around. And then it just snowballed, you know. And then I won an award with YouTube, and then they paid me some money to buy some new equipment. So I did that. And then they trained me to use the computers and stuff. And then like, it kind of just evolved. And then I had to take a leap. I had to say, well, am I going to try and find conventional work, which was almost non-existent, because who's going to hire somebody for 2 days a week? And if they do hire you for 2 days a week, how on earth is that going to pay your bills? You know, I'm a human. I still have to live in society that's built around people who work 9 to 5 every day. So it's like, how the hell am I supposed to do this? So then I had a choice. I was like, well, why don't I just, because I was earning little bits of money from YouTube, and I thought, well, why don't I just go all in and see if I can do this and support myself, because it would pay for itself, right? It would. So if I could, you know, if I could do it as a career, then I could sustain my life and still help people, which is basically the mission. That's the ethos I'm still ongoing with, right? If I can help people and I can monetize it, then it's fine. It's work. So the point, when money dries up for it, then I'll have to do something else, and then that work would dip. But excuse me. So far, excellent. You know, it works really well. And so I took that leap, and it was scary, you know, because, you know, when you're just breaking even and stuff. But it was more to the fact that I was like, it wasn't the money that was the drive. It was like I wanted to, how can I help people? And if I did something full time helping people, then I figured that, you know, that's the goal in life, you know, that'd be really cool. And so this is kind of like my life's work. And so, yeah, here we are, you know, like, I don't know, 4 or 5 years later, and it's, you know, we're making a killing with it, you know, like we're helping so many people. Like we literally, it's like nonstop, like boom, boom, like, you know, so many people, and I love it. Nothing gives me more joy than when I read comments or interview somebody and they say, your content changed my life, or even better, I had one last night. Somebody came on my Instagram live with me, and I did some fan interaction. So I said, your content saved my life. Like that kind of stuff, to me, just, you know, any kind of bad days I get with my business model, I just kind of, you know, it's besides the point. You know, I'm helping these people day in, day out, and that to me is the ultimate success. So whether or not I get 1 million subscribers on YouTube or not, I'm still helping people, and that's successful enough for me.
That's the key, right? I mean, your life is definitely a testimony of what's possible. And, you know, from our perspective at Autism Shifts, you know, we believe that it starts first with our community, right? And so I don't know if you see this chart behind me. I use it. It's on this side. I'm flipped to this side, but, you know, we use this quite a bit. We say, you know, red zone, yellow zone, green zone, and red zones where we're living really disconnected from who we are, right? In a place of worry and anger and frustration and fear. And then in the green zone, you're stepping in and hope, and then, positive expectation for your life, joy, optimism, freedom, all those good stuff that we want to experience. But the way that we kind of see it is a lot of our autism community is like living in the red zone. And unfortunately, the stigma comes from showing autism in the red zone, right? So it's just like, oh, that's like autism in the red zone, not autism in the green zone.
Right.
And so, when you see, it's like if you showed any child in the red zone, if you were to show that, then you'd have that perspective of it.
Of course.
So, the shift for us is how to empower the autism community to now live in the green zone, where we are in that place for ourselves, for our families, living our lives on purpose, like you're doing, right? You're doing what you're called to do, right? You're taking all your skills and talents and abilities and putting them to work and helping people. And I just think that's so awesome.
Thank you. I always say, like, I'm on a mission from God. So I'm trying my best, like this is it, and like, no matter if you're religious or spiritual or whatever, we all have a connection to something. And I feel like you just know. And it comes from a place of self-realization. When you realize how important you are, then you realize, oh goodness, and it comes from the fact that like everybody is important, but a lot of people don't realize how important they are, and that's probably the biggest kind of like upset I have as well. People don't realize their importance and how like just pinnacle they are to the existence of everything, So, and I think that when people realize that, then they kind of like shift into that green zone. I've had a lot of different types of therapy, and I'm currently doing kind of like Buddhism kind of therapy, I guess, if you want to call it that, so quite a spiritual person. So, and that to me is really kind of like expanding my space, really getting me to really consciously understand who I am. And it's really calming me down a lot, actually. Well, I know that and a concoction of medication, but still it is calming me down. I do take meds. So. Yeah.
Well, the way that we talk about it is the green zone. The higher you go, the more connected you are to who you are spiritually as a spiritual being coming into this world, right? To have this experience. So the goal is, how do we get to that highest level? Now, granted, we're human beings, so we can't stay there. But the more we experience that, the more joyful and peaceful life that we're going to have. And so finding your path to that is so important.
It is. Do you know what really shifted it for me? And I don't know, like, it's like, how do you, like, I had this thing, I was talking to my girlfriend about it when I was kind of like in the midst of like changing, like, creating different content and making more content and stuff. I said that I wanted to have, I needed to have more connection to God. Like, I needed to have more of a connection to God. And like, how do I feel closer to God? And one of the things it was a simple sense. It was like tap for you and not to you. And when I realized that life is happening for me and not at me or to me, then I was like, oh, everything is a lesson from God. Like, if you want to say it like that, so it's like the hand of God reaches out and says, hey, listen, the reason you're having this hard time is because you need to understand what good times are, and it's kind of like, oh yeah, you have these like peaks and troughs. And so then it makes you one with that singularity. And then you realize that you are this like, you're self-aware kind of being, and I think that's really, really interesting. And so, and again, like I said, I'm coming from a Buddhist point of view, so it depends how you want to see God. It makes no difference. It is what it is. And I think that really helped me, knowing that life is happening for me, changed my entire perspective. I was like, wow.
No, I think it's a key lesson, and it's one of those things because we teach, we have different courses for individuals with autism, and we teach a lot of this work. It's tools and processes to get into the green zone, right? And how do you keep yourself? And a lot of it's emotional, a lot of it's mental, a lot of it's spiritual, but it's how do we really connect with who we are and really kind of see where we're at as how is this supposed to serve me? Like, what is this challenge supposed to do for me? And what do I do with it? Right? How do I get it to propel me? Right? So instead of staying down in the red zone where you're suffering, right? And poor me, and why did this happen to me? which, by the way, I lived many years of that as a parent. So I know there's no judgment here. But I'm like, after a while, that's just not a good place to live. And so
100%.
the key is, how do we use this? How do we say, we can take the vision of autism from a negative to actually shift it to this beautiful positive thing. And that if we feel that way, how many people can we impact? Like, your life and what you're doing is elevating the autism community, right?
Oh, I hope so.
And a whole new perspective.
Yeah.
And we need more people like you who are within the community, right? So my favorite quote, and I use it a lot, is "Be the change you wish to see in the world," right?
Gandhi, yeah.
And that's so relevant to us as an autism community, because if we don't feel good about our diagnosis, how is anyone else going to feel good about it, right?
100%. And I think, going off quotes again as well, one of the best ones to think about as well is that it's not like a distant goal. I think Martin Luther King, or Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said that, peace or our achievements aren't a distant goal that we'll achieve. It's the process in which we do that, which is the journey. The journey is all part of the succession. And I think it's that, it's not like you're not going to wake up one day and be like, oh no, I feel fantastic now. It's like it's a work.
Destination to get there. Yeah, it's work. But with deliberate intent, that, hey, I want to live my life on purpose. I want to live in the green zone. That was my intention at some point. It's like, I want to live in the green zone more often than not, and just setting that intention does wonders, because now you allow things to come in.
Yeah, you're aligning yourself
to achieve that, right? To align with that. So
it's like the meaning of life is to give life meaning, right? That.
Yes. Absolutely. So, wow, it sounds like we have some common beliefs.
100%.
So what's going to be next for you, Daniel? What is your, if you were to say, well, gosh, yeah, where can this go? What is this vision?
So I've got a few things I'm working on. I mean, like, I have my fingers in multiple pies. I'm currently, I've scripted out, and we're about to shoot a pilot for an autistic kids YouTube show, which is basically a TV show. So it's a TV show built around education and learning, like just any other kids show, but it's for kids on the autism spectrum, because there's nothing like that, right? There's nothing like that, and it annoys me. There's like autistic characters in shows, but it's like, come on, man. Anyway, so we scripted all that out, and we're currently in the process of doing that and meeting with people, and we have communicated with TV and networks and stuff, but I don't know if we're going to do that, if we're just going to do it on YouTube or not. I don't know yet. Anyway, other than that, I have a merch line launching soon, which is pretty amazing. It's like the first time I've ever launched merch, and the merch, the t-shirts and the hoodies and stuff, they're organic soft cotton with no tags and stuff like that, so they're completely like sensory friendly, and it's going to be this whole thing. Like, it's amazing. It's launching very soon, actually. But in terms of what I'm doing with the community, I actually soft launched a membership website and a course website. So I have a course called learnautism.net, and I have a membership website called levelupautism.net. Now, my course is all about, it's like 3 modules on basically everything from communication to tips and tricks to living on the spectrum to understanding your kids, everything. Because I had so many comments, like, and people ask me questions, I thought I'll put it in a course and sell a course. It'll be easier than them trying to ask me, or even if I put it into a book, you wouldn't be able to like consolidate it. It has to be teachable. And then, but the thing I'm really focusing on my membership website, levelupautism.net. So at the end of last year, I did a soft launch, or the beginning of this year, I did a soft launch. And we had members come in there. It's great. Every month we have a course or a couple of course videos in there. And then I do a monthly or bi-weekly kind of live Zoom like this with different people in the group, when they ask me questions, and we can coach them and talk to them about things in their life that they need help with. And that's really kind of my main focus moving forward now. Because I want a better way to help my community directly. I want to have more one-on-one conversations. And I'm also going to create I've just bought a web domain called Autism Social Summit, and this is something that I want to create in physical format as well. So I'm kind of going to try and team up with charities who have members in physical locations all around the world, and we're going to put on these Autism Social Summits, right, to raise money for the charities that are there, obviously, and to raise a communication kind of forum for people, and have like basically an open, helpful discussion thing with like panel talks or whatever, because there's nothing like this, and it needs to happen.
I love it. Well, I mean, it's so surprising that when, where you turn, there's nothing that's been created yet, it's like some new territory, new ground. And it just goes to show, I mean, we've come a long way, but we still have such a long way to go.
100%. I mean, there's so much more work that needs to be done, and everybody's doing their bit, but we just got to keep fighting that fight and waving that flag, I guess.
Well, definitely. Well, we would love to be stay connected.
Sure.
And, I always say that a community that comes together can really accomplish great things. And
100%.
I think that we've kind of seen the groups that have really made some major shifts for themselves, like, most recently the LGBTQ community, but, you had the women's community, you have the Black community, and they all were able to make a shift for themselves, but it really started with people within that community. So that's the opportunity we have as an autism community to come together, and I think
there's so much diversity in it at the moment now.
Yeah.
Like there's just an indivision of diversity, not diversity in kind of ethnic backgrounds. What I mean is like diversity in like you got what people saying one thing and people saying another thing, and it really doesn't really matter. All that matters is that you kind of have a similar goal, right? And then you focus on the goal rather than the things that you probably dislike about another person. Because if you were to pick apart something that annoys you about your best friend, you probably wouldn't be best friends with them, right? But like it's the things that you like together and you enjoy and you have succession in. So I think you're absolutely right. And there's only one way to do it, and that's to lead by example. And that's exactly what we're going to do.
It's so true. It's coming together with our common vision and common ideas and common thoughts and building upon that. So, well, gosh, I am so excited for you. I know we didn't even touch on some of the things that you've done, but, I would encourage people to go check you out. And especially, it sounds like a lot of your followers are people with autism that are really trying to discover things about themselves and the diagnosis and, the autism traits. And so, I would definitely encourage our listeners to check you out. Your website is theaspieworld.com. And then follow you on Instagram and YouTube and hopefully continue to grow your presence and the wonderful work that you're doing.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And thanks for having me on as well.
Thank you. And we will follow up with you. We'll send you a copy, and we'll be posting this so that more people get familiar with the work that you're doing and the wonderful shifter and advocate that you are.
Amazing.
So, Neil, it was a pleasure to meet you and to hear about your story. And, I appreciate, again, the work you're doing on behalf of autism.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
All right. Well, you have a great day. And thank you for the listeners to check us out today. And hopefully, if you want more information about Autism Shifts, you can go to autismshifts.org. Thanks so much. We'll see you soon.